Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be unboxing the Casio A158-WA. This is a legendary watch that I've been really wanting to add to the collection for a while now, so I'm really excited to get into this and see if it lives up to the hype. Quick wrist check before we get started. I'm wearing another Casio right now. This is the Casio Edifice EFR. I have a full video that you can watch after this one breaking down why I think this is the most underrated Casio watch out there. Let me know down in the comments what you're wearing right now. Alright, so let's get into it. The packaging is pretty simple. This is classic Casio packaging. We got this outer white sleeve that we're gonna pull off first. All right, let's pop this thing open and see what we have inside. So there's the watch. It is upside down, or maybe I'm upside down here. And there we go. Pretty simple on the inside. We have this little card describing some of the specifications of the watch. It does claim to have a 7-year battery, which is pretty awesome. And I've heard stories of these watches lasting even longer than that. So let's go ahead and pull the watch out. Nothing else in here. We're gonna set this to the side. We do have a secret compartment at the bottom of this watch stand. This is our instruction manual, and that's pretty much it for packaging. So let's go ahead and take this plastic cover off and get our first look at the watch. Damn, so my first impressions of this watch are that this thing looks way better in person than it even does online. I've seen probably hundreds of pictures of this thing and watched dozens of YouTube videos reviewing them, but it is a different experience seeing it for the first time in person. Let's go ahead and take it off the watch stand so we can get a closer look. So it has this clasp on the back of the bracelet that we're gonna pull off, and it should just slide right off the stand once this is loosened. There we go. All right, so very first impressions, this thing is super light. It has a very similar band to the Edifice that I'm wearing, where most of the weight and the heft is in the watch itself, and the band feels a little bit lighter and a little bit more flimsy than the rest of the watch. But honestly, this thing feels pretty solid, especially for the price point. We all know these things are dirt cheap, so it's really cool to actually feel this thing in person and just get the impression that it's well worth the money and it feels more premium than the price reflects. While we're here, let's just take a couple measurements to verify the dimensions and get a better idea of how big this watch is. So the full case width, including the buttons on the sides, is about 36 millimeters wide. And if we don't measure with those buttons, the case width comes in at just under 34 millimeters. The true lug-to-lug distance is going to be 36.4 millimeters, and the majority of the bracelet is going to be 14.8 millimeters wide. So this is definitely on the smaller end, which I think adds to some of the charm and appeal of this watch. Let's compare it to the Edifice to get more of a size comparison. So the Edifice comes in at just under 40 millimeters in case diameter, and again, the A158 comes in at just under 34 millimeters. So definitely quite a difference in case size and overall watch dimensions. This is definitely now the smallest watch that I own in my collection. One more dimension I forgot is case thickness. So this is a thin case. It's coming in at 8.6 millimeters, which is actually a bit thicker than the Edifice, which comes in at 8.2 millimeters. But these are both extremely thin, low profile watches that are not going to stick out or get caught on sleeves too often. Let's take a closer look at the face of this watch. This thing is so cool looking. It's sort of a mix of modern and retro at the same time. It's somehow fun and charming and doesn't really take itself too seriously, but also has this kind of cool, elegant look to it that could be dressed up if you really wanted to. All right, so putting this thing on for the first time, it's definitely a little bit loose. So let's figure out how to adjust this bracelet size. All right, so the back of the clasp has this little down arrow, and it looks like if we pop this up, there we go, we should be able to loosen this clasp. So this clasp is able to slide freely on the bracelet. So it looks like we just have to find the right length and sort of guess a little bit and then clamp it back down. I feel like I'm doing something wrong here. All right, I got to snap back down, so let's see if that fits a little bit better. This is kind of tricky to do with one hand. This isn't my favorite style of bracelet or clasp, but it'll do. All right, there we go. So it is a little bit tighter. It is now upside down. All right, let's try this again. We're gonna clip that little hook on and then snap it shut. And there we go, she's on the wrist. All right, so first impressions with this thing actually on my wrist is that it feels really, really awesome. This is definitely the lightest watch I've ever worn, and I feel like I would hardly notice this thing if I was wearing it throughout the day. For as small as this watch is, it honestly doesn't look that bad on my wrist. I feel like it actually fits pretty well, despite being definitely the smallest watch I've ever worn. Yeah, this thing looks pretty awesome. I love how old school this thing looks. It looks like sort of a mini retro TV on my wrist. Yeah, this thing definitely lives up to the hype. I feel like I'm gonna be wearing this quite a lot now. All right, let's try out these buttons and see what these things do. So it looks like this button is changing from a 12-hour to a 24-hour clock. This button seems to be for setting the mode and potentially also for setting the time. I will have a more in-depth review going over all the functions and the features of this watch in the future, but right now I'm just kind of playing around with this thing. All right, we'll figure out the time later, but it looks like that button is going to be important for setting the time. This button I'm pretty sure is going to be the light, although I don't see anything happening. I've heard the light on this thing is really weak, so let's try turning off the lights and see what happens. All right, there we go. So you get the faintest, lightest green glow when it's really dark. But it seems like this is not gonna do much for you unless you are in pitch black darkness. But in normal light, this thing is really easy to read. The numbers really pop off the screen. And I don't think you're gonna have any trouble reading the time in normal lighted situations. The thing I've always found funny about this watch is that it's really marketed as a water resistant watch. It's even printed in pretty bold letters right on the front of the watch. I just find this funny because it's only rated for up to 30 meters of water resistance, which basically means it's resistant to splashes and washing your hands in the sink, but it's not really supposed to be swam in or submerged underwater. Now, I have heard stories of people swimming with these things or even diving up to pretty significant depths without any issues. So I imagine, as it is a Casio, it's probably way more durable than it's actually rated for, but I just think it's funny how it's marketed as this water resistant watch, even though it's only technically rated to be water resistant up to 30 meters. But honestly, first impressions after the first few minutes owning this watch, I am super impressed. I've heard so much about this watch over the years, and it honestly does live up to the hype. If you haven't added this to your collection yet, or you're on the fence about it, go get it. This thing is so cool looking, and honestly, it's gonna be hard to regret a Casio purchase, especially at this price. I'll leave some links down in the description or the comments if you wanna go pick one up. But otherwise, thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and be on the lookout for the full breakdown video of this watch, as well as tons of other watch-related content and reviews. I'll see you in the next video.